Well, guys, it's been a while since I've talked to y'all live. What's up, guys? Welcome to the live stream. Today, we're going to be doing an organization season preview for Minnesota and Iowa, and a little bit of the Heartlanders because they had a terrible season. And we have the Minnesota expert over here again, and Jake. What's up? What's up, Jake?
Howdy, howdy. Well, we're officially under a week away from regular season hockey, baby. And we're just a little over a week away from, well, the Minnesota Wild season premiere. So,
Yep, we're Minnesota starts next week, I believe, around on the 10th.
nope, 12th.
On the 12th, and then Iowa starts their season the following night, unfortunately, on Friday the 13th, which we all know that's a movie where Jason Voorhees decides to haunt, was it Crystal Lake?
I'm not really much of a horror guy, but I know what you're talking about, Friday the 13th.
Me neither. Wendy in the chat, what's up? All right, so we have a couple things we want to touch base on for Minnesota and Iowa. We're gonna start with Iowa first because I had Elijah. He's not a part of the stream today because he's in school, obviously. He wrote down some points that he wanted us to go over. So, obviously, with last season, Iowa made the playoffs for the first time. For the second time in franchise history. The first time was in 2019. Would have been the second time in 2020 because that season was going well. And then you all know what happened. So we had last season ended horribly for the Iowa Wild. They ended with a 2-game sweep from the Rockford IceHogs, who went on and got swept themselves by Texas. But that ultimately led to the release of the entire the coaching staff, including Tim Army. And here's other things we want to keep an eye on, including with that. The first point is, well, we have a new head coach, but not a new face to the organization in Brett McLean. He was the Wild Minnesota assistant, and he was in charge of the power play, which Iowa struggled. I'm going to bring up the stats for that really quick as I'm talking about this. Iowa had 51 goals on 282 attempts for only 18.1%. That was in the lower half of the league. So hopefully with Brett McLean, becoming the head coach, that gets fixed up. Jake, we've heard your opinion on Brett McLean. What do you think Iowa's power play improves, or does it stay about the same for this season?
Well, real quick though, if you check the Instagram, we actually have some breaking news from Elijah. Jesper Wallstedt is officially reassigned to Iowa.
Yep. So we get to keep our number one goaltender,
which, to be fair, was expected, But anyway, kind of circling back to that point here, especially with Wallstedt developing, I have a feeling that's going to be good. Obviously, that'll help. But, the only issue that I could potentially see, and I've seen this with the Minnesota Wild, is they'll go on streaks. And again, I don't know if that's necessarily on the coach, the scheme, a combination of both, or what. But there'll be about a week to 2 week stretch where the power play unit is just an absolute dog. Like, we're talking top 5 in the entire league. And then seemingly overnight, we'll drop to like the bottom half where we can't stop a darn thing and we can't get the puck into the back of the net. However, again, I'm not going to put all that on the coaching. I'm not going to put all that on the players, just because obviously you're not playing the exact same opponent every single night. Some players, or like some opponents, let in more power play goals than others. I mean, that's just the way it is. And some are literally a brick wall. However, though, I will say, kind of, wrapping this point up, I feel like it should improve because, again, McLean has been up at the NHL level. He has seen what it's like to have a competent power play unit. The only concern I have is, at least with the top guys, is, the call ups and stuff like that. That could be an issue with chemistry and stuff like that, unless he decides to not even use them in the power play type of thing. And then he decides to go with the lower tier guys or however you want to phrase it there. But that's about the only thing I could see really derailing things is if there's a lot of injuries up in Minnesota and we have to call on like half the squad or something. But in my opinion, I think it should only go up to at least 20 to hopefully 21, 22%. Because I feel like if you're in the low to mid 20s, you're humming. Because, last year, Edmonton had literally the best power play unit of all time at a tick over 30%. I don't think it'll get up to there because, Draisaitl and McDavid are literally gods when it comes to hockey and scoring and stuff like that. But it's just, if you can get above 20%, you're usually doing pretty good. The higher you can go, the better. But if you can get to about, I'd say 21 to 22%, or at least 1 in every 4 goals go in, then you're going to be on house money there.
I will say, from what Elijah told me, I think no, that's for Minnesota. Never mind. One last point on Iowa, excuse me, with the reassignment of Jesper Wallstedt to Iowa. Also want to point out before I even dig into that, Iowa, it will be sticking around for at least another 5 seasons. The Wild and Polk County made an agreement to stay at Wells Fargo Arena for another 5 seasons. So 5 more years of hockey, at least in Des Moines, and we're all pretty excited about that because it sucks that the Iowa Stars and Iowa Chops kind of just packed their and left, but then again, that wasn't their fault. That was the organization's decision, which it makes sense though because organizations they want to be more closer to their affiliation.
Mm-hmm. Especially because going from Des Moines to Dallas is not an easy jaunt. Des Moines to St. Paul is a hell of a lot closer and a hell of a lot easier to call up guys than going all the way to Dallas. So I could agree why they would do something like that because it's about 4 or 5 hours from Des Moines to the Twin Cities versus 12 or 13 down to Dallas or something like that. So I could see why, but it is good that the Iowa Wild, or at least the Iowa or the Wild, or the Iowa Wild are going to be around for another 5 years. Whether or not they stay the Iowa Wild for those entire 5 years, who knows? I bet they do, but it's just one of those things where just at the very least, Des Moines has another attraction to go to for 5 more years, which is a great thing. And also, it seems like a lot of the guys who have played in Des Moines, who've come up to Minnesota, have both loved Des Moines and St. Paul. So that's always a plus as well.
Yeah. It's a 10-hour and 50-minute drive from Des Moines to Dallas. For those wondering. And then you also have to remember that 10 hours was at 20 for one season because of the affiliation change from Texas, from Dallas to Anaheim for a season, which honest to God was a really weird decision. Very good logo, though. You cannot deny the Iowa Chops logo.
And also one thing, too, that I'm kind of intrigued about, too, not pertaining to the Wild organization, who, the Carolina Hurricanes organization, where the heck do their AHL players go? Do they have, any idea where those guys are at or anything? Because I'm more curious than anything. Obviously, I know this is more of a Wild organization stream, but ever since their affiliation with the Chicago Wolves got pulled for XYZ reasons, I'm still not 100% sure what the beef
because
is.
Chicago wanted to be an independent. They want to be their own organization, which I think is really stupid because then that means that there now has to be 33 teams in order to have an affiliation aspect. They basically want to make Chicago a professional team rather than a minor league team.
Which is never going to work because of I don't know. There's this little original 6 team that Windy City roots for called the Blackhawks. I don't think that's really gonna, unless they completely jump out of the AHL and move to like a different league or something like that. But the thing is, there's like 3 different Chicago teams anyway in hockey, not even just the Blackhawks. So it's like, good luck with that. I feel bad for the, Carolina Hurricanes, but also at the same time, I don't, because they let the Charlotte Checkers affiliation. But again, that's a different debate for a different day. I just figure I wanted to throw that in because it does kind of pertain to the Iowa Wild because, one of the opponents probably. Because I don't know, in the AHL, do they play every single team just like in the NHL?
No.
Or is it just East and West?
The West and East, the westernmost and easternmost divisions usually stay to themselves. And then you'll get once in a while a mixture between the Central and the East. Because this year, and I want to bring that up really quick before we have a clean segue into the next topic I want to talk about. Iowa actually is playing the Calder Cup champions this season for 4 games. And I'm actually going to the first of the 2 home games that we play them. And the worst part and the best part is we don't play Hershey until halfway through the year, and then we don't see them again until April. So we're talking like mid-playoff push is when we're actually tail end of a playoff push is when we'll see them at home, which, to be quite honest, that's going to be really cool because then that means I don't have to see those brown jerseys. Even though I do like I do understand the color scheme because they're in Hershey, Pennsylvania, home of Hershey's chocolate. So makes sense. But anyway, back on track here because there's another topic I want to talk about, and that is the prospects. Yes, we just Iowa finally got back their goaltender in Jesper Wallstedt, but there's a couple other prospects that I want to go over, which we've made a couple signages for them. And that is, I'm going to butcher these names, and I apologize for butchering these. Jake Lucchini, Joel Tesdale, and others. And Jake didn't go, or not Jake, Elijah didn't go really too deep into those. And bringing some much needed depth and veterans to the Wild. I also expect Nick Swaney to take a big step this season, especially when he kind of had an off season. From the Minnesota fan perspective here, which player from Iowa finally takes that step up to Minnesota this season?
Like just out of those or just in general?
Just in general, because I know we have Marco, we have not McLean, he's our coach. I don't even think we have Joseph Cramarosa anymore. I don't even know whatever happened to Cramarosa. Anyway, regardless. What players in Iowa do you see? Actually, I can even pull up the roster for you if you want me to.
Let's do that just because I'm more curious than anything right now.
But from the players that we do know that are on Iowa, who finally makes that big step to take his reins in Minnesota?
Honestly, the name that I'm most intrigued and the one that I hope sticks the most, Sammy Walker. Because he's had some glimpses, he's had some great ideas and stuff like that. And honestly, if it wasn't for the cap issues and stuff like that, I feel like Walker would be a day one on the 3rd or 4th line. But the fact that there's still all these salary cap issues and stuff like that, and plus, he did have a very, very, very good season when he was up with us last year for, 10 games, something like that?
I don't remember how long he played up there, but I do know he did have a very, very good prospect showcase.
So I know that that's really going to be intriguing to watch. O'Rourke is another guy that will be kind of intriguing to watch because that's another name I've been hearing a lot about. And then as far as that's concerned, I mean, obviously this year we need to see a lot more Rossi We need to see a lot more. Basically, we just need to see a lot more Rossi. Wallstead is going to be a name that's also going to be intriguing to see because, well,
but let's be honest. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Let's be honest here. Volstead. I got to make sure I say his name right because it's not Wall, it's Vol. He's not NHL ready yet, but he will be. I think he.
And interrupting you from there, it depends on the injuries. It depends on how the injuries fall and stuff like that. So that's why I said if I don't see Volstead up here, it's not that I'm mad about it. It's because both of our goaltenders are healthy, or we went out and did something different to let Volstead actually develop. Because, like I say, this whole conglomerate of just players and like ideas and stuff like that all come down to health. Because, come December or January, if half of the Iowa roster's up in Minnesota due to injuries, well, then it could be in a completely different season here. Or if we're all healthy and stuff like that, who knows? I mean, but yeah, just finishing up what you were like asking me there, Walker is probably the number one. And then maybe Volstead, if they do decide to pull him up just to see where he's at towards the end of the season or if there's injuries or something. And then maybe even this next guy, Shawzy. Mason Shaw is down in Iowa on a rehab stint after his second.
That's actually the guy that I was going to pick. That's the guy I'm going to pick. I want to see Mason Shaw make that step. He didn't have a terrible go around when he was in Minnesota. However, his injury is the main concern of why he didn't play. I think if he didn't have that injury, he probably is staying in Minnesota.
Oh yeah, he's probably our fourth line, like one of our fourth line wingers.
Yeah, no, Shaw's defenseman, I think.
No, he's a winger.
Oh, he is a winger. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I see Shaw. I can see Mason Shaw making the step, and that's actually who I want to see make the jump this year. If Mason Shaw can avoid the injury, he'll kill it for us in Iowa, and then he'll earn that top roster spot. The only problem with earning roster spots in the NHL, it's so hard to keep it, especially when you have guys that are meant to be in Minnesota. And I'm not trying to be mean when I say this to anyone here. You got guys that are NHL ready, and then you have guys like, and I'm gonna call a player out here, Marco Rossi, who, when he was in Minnesota, he looked scared. To be honest, am I the only one that thinks that?
No, you're 100% correct there. But he's also bulked up. He's also trained in Minnesota the entire summer. He's also gotten, a bit more bulked up, jacked up, and ready to go. It's just going to be, will that still translate? Because for me, kind of finishing this little point off with Rossi, if he can give us 15 to 20 goals with about 40 points, like 30 to 40 points or so, then I feel like, okay, we have the real deal now. Now Wild fans and Wild organization fans can calm down because, well, he does look like the potential future here. It's just one of those things where at this point it's either, poop or get off the pot with him. Like, we need to see him up here, like, regardless of how good he is, how bad he's doing, whatever, we need him up here for pretty much the entire season, if not like 60 games. He needs to be up here for at least 3/4 of the season, getting seasoned, basically, taking those pucks, making those shots, getting used to the hits, the trials, the just overall general hockey stuff, And like I say, just give us about 15 goals with about 30 points or so. Give us some hope because he is a centerman, and centers, at least in the way we use them, aren't necessarily point facilitators. They're more just trying to keep stuff on the ice, trying to make sure that the guys on the wings and stuff like that are ready to go. And if they have the opportunity, then they'll fire. but they're not necessarily looked at to be the guy, which helps him out. But it's just one of those things where we have to see him for more than 20 games. We have to see him for the entire season to see what he actually has. Because if we keep sending him down to Iowa, congratulations, he's going to destroy it all the time. But the thing is, he's a top draft pick for the organization. He's like, I think, one of our first or second ones under Guerin and stuff like that. So we need to see him. It's been a few years. We need to see his development because after all the injuries and the illnesses that he's had, we need to see him. That's what I'm trying to hammer home. We need to see him in Minnesota for a very long extended time.
Yeah, there's one other guy that I want to I'll throw in like an honorable mention into this topic like there is another guy that I want to see finally make the jump at least to get some like time in Minnesota, and that's this guy right here, Nick Petan. Holy Mackinac, he had a great season last year. That wrist shot, dude, like the instant that you see it coming, it's like a 75% chance that puck's going in the net. Because, like, dude, Nick Petan, he was one of Iowa's top goals. I think he was Iowa's top goal scorer last season. I think he was. I'm going to confirm that really quick here because I know that he was up there for us like early. He was here. I'll bring this up for you. I'll bring this up for you guys. That way you guys can see here.
All right.
Your screen, wild stats, bingo. Look at this. Nick Petan. He had 62 points last season. So he's the guy that is like ready to make the jump, but I think Guerin is looking at this and think Petan is probably going to be the future for Iowa for now. And I mean, I hate to say that because we want to see all of these players right here make that jump, but I really more want to see. Oh, whoops, wrong one. I really more want to see these guys make the. What am I trying to say here? You guys, you know what I'm trying to say here. I want to see one of these guys. Yeah, I want to see one of these guys make Minnesota. Rossi, I mean, I don't know if he's going to be fully ready. Fogarty, he might be able to make it up there. He had 49 last season. There's Sammy, we've mentioned him. Joe Hicketts, he was a good defenseman. Adam Beckman, he was injured, so I'd say keep him in Iowa this season, so that way he can play a full season. I'm not really seeing much others on here. Reese Smolik, though, I do want to see him. He only played 12 games because he was called up late in the year. He had a really good run though. He was very good for us defensively. I will say that. And then looking at just scrolling down a little bit farther, and then you just have this random Jesper Volstead 1 goal from Chicago, which that's like one of the best plays for Iowa last season.
Yeah, I mean, anytime a goalie can score a goal, that's always a plus.
Yeah. Alrighty. Let's get back on track here. Let's make the jump up to minute. Actually, I want to do one quick topic about the Heartlanders. Elisha didn't write anything down there, but the Heartlanders had a really crappy year last year. They went on nothing but losing streaks. They had that winning streak to end the season, though, which, I mean, at least you end your season on a high note. But I mean, like, even that didn't cover how bad that season went for the Heartlanders. Now, we can't really talk about much of the players because, well, for some stupid reason, the Minnesota doesn't own the rights to the players that are in the ECHL, which is really freaking stupid. So that makes me wonder what the heck's the point of the East Coast Hockey League. But then again, I'm only just a fan. I can't really give much of an opinion other than it's stupid. because there was one player on the Heartlanders last year that I wanted to see dress up in Iowa Wild gear, and that was Zach White. He was what do I want to say? He was him in the ECHL. Too bad that he is no longer a part of the Heartlanders. He's now back overseas. But let's make that jump back up to Minnesota. Hold on a second. I'm getting some background noise from you.
That was me. I just clicked over to the actual video just to kind of check the comments and stuff like that and muted it. So,
oh,
I bet
you can also look that on the side panel on the right. Did you not know that?
Well, I'm currently still in the main screen here, so there we go.
Yeah, you can look at the comments on the right side. There's a comments tab. That's how I'm able to read the comments on Nick's stream. Yeah, they don't look. We have a couple people. We had a couple people watching. So, All right. Anyway, let's get up to Actually, let me ask one more. Let me ask one more question about Iowa, especially for you, because you're the one that wants to see these prospects do well. Iowa made the playoffs last year, but didn't make a lot of noise. Does Iowa go back to the playoffs this year?
I'd say yes, just because there's still enough down there where, there's still enough down there. Like case in point, I mean, between Beckman, like Walker, Volstead, McIntyre's a pretty decent backup and stuff like that. Mermis, a lot of those guys we recognize in Minnesota because they have played, a few games and stuff like that. So they do have NHL talent and stuff like that. Granted, I don't really know how the AHL Central looks or, as far as those teams are concerned. But, I mean, I don't see why they can't, I know that, Iowa hasn't necessarily had the greatest history when it comes to playoff success or even making the playoffs. But who knows? Like I say, but if I wanted to say, I'd probably say yes, they do.
Yeah, 10 years in the American Hockey League and not a sink and only 2 playoff appearances. I mean, something has to change. I thought Tim Army was our solution. I thought Tim Army was going to be the one that led us to a Calder Cup appearance. Unfortunately, that did not happen. I will say, if 2020 did not cut short, we're possibly talking at least a Western Conference champion. We're talking a new banner in Wells Fargo Arena. But we can't. Unfortunately, that's just Iowa luck. And we all know that, especially when it comes to college football and stuff like that. Alrighty. Let's finally make the jump to the state of hockey. Minnesota. Last season, the Minnesota Wild struggled at times, but made the playoffs with a first-round exit to the team that lost to the team that won the Stanley Cup. We shall not mention said team that won Stanley Cup, but we shall mention the team that beat us. It was the Dallas Stars. And I'm going to be honest here. With me being an Iowa hockey fan, it kind of stung to see Minnesota lose, but it was more of, at least I still have a team to root for because of the Iowa Stars, the affiliation with Dallas. That's the reason why I'm a bit of a Dallas Stars fan. Sorry to all Minnesotans, but at least you can't hate me for it being just a random freaking reason.
Yeah, well, understandable. And like I say, really the only reason outside of, I mean, like I say, though, that was like 30 years ago. Both teams have different identities now and this, that, and the other thing, blah, 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 yet whatever. Like I say, I could very easily be salty and stuff like that, but, I mean, it's a different time. It's been 30 years already and stuff like that. But, like I say, just mainly due to the whole Suter thing is what still kind of soured me. But anyway, like I say, just kind of closing the door on that and stuff like that. Even though I do like Pavelski and stuff like that, it's just Suter. But anyway.
Understandable. Alrighty, so the first point that Elijah has written down for me, and I'll just read it word for word for here. The one player he highlights I mean, who else do you highlight for Minnesota? Kirill Kaprizov. He was a player. He was a player who carried himself like a veteran for the momentum from the moment he played in his very first game. He may have struggled a little bit along the way, but played with an air of experience you don't see in many rookies. As he surprised everyone by recording 51 points in 55 games and a Calder Trophy win in his first season, Kaprizov then followed it up last season with his sophomore numbers of 108 points in 81 games and was the first ever Wild player to score 100 or more points. He also set a number of records, and with respect to those numbers, everyone is wondering what's him. So I shall ask the question for you, Jake. Does Kaprizov match those, or does he kind of falter off, but not too much?
Well, I mean, 100 points is always difficult, regardless of who you are, unless you're McDavid or Draisaitl for some reason, But anyway, it's like one of those type of things where, honestly, I don't really see him dropping off that much, if any, really, because, well, Kaprizov is him. I mean, I don't think it takes much of us who's watched more than like 5 minutes of hockey, or especially, like Wendy, Riley, those guys in the chat, they've seen plenty of, Kaprizov over their last couple years or so to know that he's him. And like I say, Minnesota's been clamoring to have that guy basically since the days of Marian Gaborik, who we all hoped that Gaborik would have become, but just never quite did, lived up to the hope that everyone thought he would have, at least in Minnesota. So with Kaprizov being him and understanding that he's the guy, yes, I believe that he can match his totals basically stat for stat, especially because now, real quick here, couple of major signings to announce, since last season. They locked up Zuccarello for another 2 years. So that's his line mate there until, I'm guessing, Yurov comes over. I'm assuming that Yurov is probably going to be his winger at some point in the not too distant future. But we'll worry about all that stuff when we get to it. But so, yeah, obviously him and Zuccarello have a lot of chemistry with each other and stuff like that. So that's going to be another major thing. The only thing is the center between them. Is it going to be Hartman for the entire year? Is it going to be Rossi? Is it going to be maybe even Eriksson Ek that jumps up to the top line? I don't know. It'll be intriguing to watch, though. But yeah. So for me, I feel like Kaprizov can very easily match those numbers.
For me, okay, 108 points is impressive. Let's be honest. It's not, but you can't. I think he'll eventually have a season where he'll reach 110 because he's just that good. I think he falters just slightly, not by much. I think he still cracks 100 points this season, but I don't think he gets to 108. And I think the reason for that is because, yeah, you're in one of the tougher divisions in the entire NHL, in the Central Division. That division sees Kaprizov more than any division ever, and than any of the other divisions. So I have a feeling that they'll find a way to slow him down, but they'll get worn out so quickly from wearing him down that he still ends up scoring points. At least even if it's just like the guy's like hitting him, but he spins out of it and then he looks and makes a sweet pass across the ice for a goal. I think so. I can't talk today. I was up till 3. I was up till almost 3 o'clock in the morning. So give me a break. I think yes, he doesn't match, but he does come close. So he cracks 100. I say he gets about 105 points. That's still acceptable.
Yeah, anything above 100 for him is, like anything above 100, it's just pretty impressive. I mean, let's be honest here.
All right. Next topic we want to talk about, and I already had this point ready to go since we started this stream, and that was power play. we're talking a power play that struggled in the postseason. I'll just read the stat right here. 4 for 22. That is a problem. However, not only are the Wild planning to work on the scheme from day one, but the unit has a new contributor, an assistant, Jason King, hired to replace Brett McLean after McLean became the head coach of Iowa. King previously oversaw Vancouver's power play, which was ranked 11th last season. So, and as I'm reading that, I will bring up Minnesota's regular season power play status for you guys to read while I continue. What worked for the Canucks for when they were 11th in the power play? It was their balance. 9 players had multiple goals and 7 reached double digits in points. Most of the Wild's prospects has come from their first unit, led by Kirill and I don't know who Jeek is. That's literally what it says. Jeek. Joel Eriksson Ek. Joel Eriksson Ek. Okay. I had to think about that a second. And the team had strong stretches last season, but the Wild continued to struggle come playoff time. In their 6-game first round loss to the Stars, they said, and I said it earlier, they were a bleak 4 for 22. Now, with the hiring of his name again, Jason King, I expect our power play to get better up in Minnesota. Jake, do you agree with me on this?
I do. And also, too, like I say, going back to that playoff series, the 4 for 22, Joel Eriksson Ek being injured really hampered that for us because he was sort of the engine that got everything going. You know, with him being a center, with him being a big body that stands in front of the net. He's one of those guys that, you can't let him get in front of the net. Otherwise, more often than not, he'll either cause troubles, and set up other people, make things a little bit exciting, or he can just pot it in the back of the net. I mean, he's one of those guys who, I'm going to say it now, if he doesn't get the other A besides Foligno, I think that's a disservice to him. And like I say, eventually at some point, if Kaprizov stays, I feel like Kaprizov could eventually take over after Moose retires and stuff like that. But it's just one of those things where, or hell, he could even have the C, but we'll worry about that later, once, if that ever does happen. But it's just one of those things where Joel Eriksson Ek is a very, very big cog of this motor that is the Minnesota Wild. And when he went down, that caused a lot of issues for a lot of different reasons on this team, including the power play. Because again, Ek was the engine that got the power play really moving because he could set up in a lot of different ways. He could facilitate to Kaprizov. He could facilitate to Zuccarello, Boldy. I mean, you name it. He could help out, he's one of those guys who can do a lot of different things. And when he got into the dirty areas and stepped up as that sort of brute center who's more of a guy who's not afraid to get into it, that's when his game really took off. And when he became worth his, 8x8 contract that he signed just a few years ago. And like I say, so with that preamble aside, yes, the power play does improve because if we all stay healthy here, there's no reason it shouldn't. Because again, Eriksson Ek was the cog that got the power play moving. And now with him being healthy, maybe him getting a little bit stronger, that should really hopefully help us out.
Yeah, I'm just typing down some things here so that way I can present them to you guys so you guys know what we're talking about. From Minnesota's last.
By the way, Trev, I'll be right back. I'm gonna grab some more water and use the bathroom. So just give me about a minute or two here while you keep the guys entertained.
No, you're fine. All right. So the next topic where I'm gonna reference here is going to be players that I want to watch for this season, but I want to wait for him to get back because I want to get his player first because I already got mine up. For me, the power play definitely is going to have a massive improvement for Minnesota, especially when they're hiring a coach who had who was the sole reason that, well, not the sole reason, but was the coach that led Vancouver to having the 11th ranked power play on the season. Now, I also can see them, because I'll bring up the stats one more time. 21.4%, 54 goals and 252 attempts. Now, it's hard enough to get a goal every time on the power play. It's not a real easy thing to do. However, it's not like, actually, yeah, it's pretty hard to do, because you're gonna run into troubles, especially when power plays can sputter throughout the season. So, looking at anything else that I want to cover here while I wait for Jake. One thing I do want to cover, especially for Minnesota, is the fact that Minnesota still is finding a way to struggle in the postseason. Like, they're coming off the high of like finishing third. I think it was third place in the Central. You're finishing in the top 3 in the Central, and you somehow still falter off in the playoffs. It's like you go from the third best team to like middle of the pack, and I know that it's just part of the rebuild process, as if you want to call it that. Alrighty. Jake, I wanted to ask you this first because I already have my player that I want to look at for next season. Who do you see as the one player to watch for Minnesota other than like Kirill Kaprizov? Because we already know everyone's gonna have our eyes on him.
Well, I mean, this might be the low-hanging fruit, but Marco Rossi. Because again, he's one of your first big draft picks if you're Guerin. He's had a lot of issues with health and injury and stuff like that, especially during the, COVID era and stuff like that. Plus, he's, touted as being one of our key pieces of the future. Like, over the next 5-10 years after guys like Spurgeon, Moose, Marcus Foligno, when they retire, Zuccarello's only got a few years left and stuff like that. So he's going to be one of those guys that we, count on to take over, step up, be that guy, because we still have a couple years yet, with a lot more of our centers developing in like the minors and then, our draft picks from this past year and stuff like that. So there's still a lot of, meat on the bone. There's still a lot of time there with those guys. So, but Rossi, at this point, it is now or never. Like, you got maybe this season, and then you have to start thinking, because if he isn't going to fit your scheme, if he isn't going to be that guy, you also got to think about maybe potentially shipping him out while his value is still really high. Or does he finally blossom and turn into that player you drafted him that high for? So for me, it's Marco Rossi, because he's now finally getting some playing under his belt. He's bulked up. He's gotten stronger. I mean, from the highlights and stuff that I've seen, he looks a lot more comfortable and stuff like that now. So for me, it's Marco Rossi, because now or never. We have to see how you look at the NHL level for more than 10 games.
For me, the player that I want to keep an eye on, and I'm actually going to pick a player from Minnesota, and that is going to be Sam Steele. He had a really good year last year with 28 points.
Trevor?
What?
I don't think Sam Steele is with us anymore.
Really?
No, he's in Dallas, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he's now in Dallas.
Okay, then I gotta change my selection here. I wanted to say Sam Steele, but I didn't know that he was on the team. Can I find a roster that actually has hold on. Pause for effect.
Well, if you want, I could try to find you a roster from the actual.
Here, I got it.
Yeah, okay.
That doesn't have a roster. You sons of guns. You're supposed to have a roster for me. Okay, hold on a second. I got it. I can figure this out.
All right.
I got this. CBS? You sons of guns. Okay. Okay, let me look at last year's team. Because I gotta remember who's not on the team anymore. Looking at. Oh wait, why I'm looking? I got stats. Hold on, roster. Let me look at roster. 2023-2024 roster. There we go. There we go. Okay.
Some technical difficulties.
Yeah. Because my dumbass didn't know that Sam Steele wasn't going to be on Minnesota anymore.
I mean, they didn't make a big deal about it when he left. It was just more like, oh, Sam Steele's to Dallas. It was, like during like the initial free agency period where there's about 50 different names and everyone's wondering, where's Erik Karlsson going? Where's this player? It's like they didn't really make a big deal about it.
Oh, here we go. I got him. And I forgot that we picked him up. The player that I want to see go off, and this is only because I don't know how long he has left in the league. Pat Maroon. I want to see. I mean, he's one of our veterans now. It's cool to see a St. Louis Blue now play for Minnesota. And me being a Wild fan, actually recently becoming a Wild fan, never thought Pat Maroon was going to be a member of the Minnesota Wild, because you don't typically play for a division rival unless you go from like one team to a different conference, back to the Central.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to see how Pat Maroon can fit into our organization here. This is his first year with Minnesota, if I remember correctly.
It is.
So I want to see how he fits in. Yes, he's still Pat Maroon. He's still the only guy in NHL history to win 3 consecutive cups just as a player, if I remember correctly.
At least in the modern era.
Yeah, the modern era. Because he did it with St. Louis, and then back-to-back with Tampa.
Yep.
He almost did. He almost had the 4-peat, but that would have been definite script. But no, I want to see Pat Maroon. Well, be Pat Maroon, the guy that knows how to put the puck in the back of the net and knows how to lead a team to win a Stanley Cup. Now, do I think Minnesota's going to win the Stanley Cup this year? That's a little bit of a stretch. And I'll actually ask you that.
Agree on that one.
So then to basically round out the stream here, because I do know that there's one topic that we want to do, or 2 things that we want to cover before we end it. Where does Minnesota? Let me type this out really quick. Standings. And now that I have it up, I will ask the question: where does Minnesota end the season standing wise? Do they win the division, or do they barely make it in the playoff for the wild card? Jake, what do you think?
Well, I've said it before. I'll say it again. The Wild will finish 3rd in the Central. And it seems to be a pretty common take amongst a lot of people in the NHL community and the hockey world and this and that and the other thing. Because for me, it's still Dallas and Colorado are the top 2 teams in the Central until I'm proven otherwise. Colorado may be like could be potentially one that falls out a little bit just because they still are without Landeskog, but their depth is still amazing. They still have Makar, McKinnon, and those guys who definitely know how to lead. And then, of course, too, Dallas, I mean, they showed, like their muscle and stuff last year. Robertson's looking like the real deal. Jake Ottinger, I mean, us Wild fans have seen that, firsthand in the playoffs. They still have enough good depth veterans and stuff like that, even though it depends on if Ben can keep his head out of his own butt and try not to cross-check guys into the ice every week. But that's a different debate for a different day there. If you know, you know. If you remember, you remember. But if they can keep their heads on them and stuff like that, I feel like Dallas will probably win, Colorado, and then Minnesota finishes third. And then from 4 to 7 or like 4 to 6, good luck trying to predict that log jam. But yeah.
For me, I'm gonna go one better. I'm gonna say we finish second in the Central, and we get home ice advantage for a playoff series. And I think that team that ends up being third place will be Colorado. With the absence of Gabriel Landeskog, I don't see Colorado being the Colorado that won the Cup. They are not going to be that team this season. Sorry, Avalanche fans. You're not the team you used to be without Landeskog. And if you have Landeskog, then you're definitely taking this second place in the Central. And it will be Colorado and Minnesota and up for a playoff series. It will still be Colorado and Minnesota for a playoff series this season, but I think it'll be Minnesota that has the home ice advantage. Now, the final question that we want to ask is, and I'll bring it up. How far do we go in the playoffs? Now, we all want to be biased and say this. We all are going to win the Stanley Cup. Unfortunately, we're the guys that are a little bit more smarter, and we're going to make legit predictions here. Jake, I'll have you go first.
Well, honestly, just please, for the love of everything holy, can we at least make it into the second round? If we can get into the second round, I'll be happy. So, yeah, give me, making it to the second round would be the most ideal thing, in my opinion. Because, again, there's still a lot of youth to develop. There's still a lot of good players out there. And, I mean, yeah, sure, the roster, really hasn't changed a whole lot, all things considered. And I think a lot of people weren't expecting us to make as much noise as we did last year, even if it wasn't the same from like 21-22, where we were just absolutely crushing it and then all that stuff. But it's just one of those things where I want to see us in the second round, just to at the very least give us some confidence or stuff like that. Yeah. It would just be nice to see us not potentially turn into the Maple Leafs or turn into yet another meme in the sports world.
Yeah, you're going to hate me, but unfortunately, I don't see us getting out of the first round again. It's because it's a trend. We're literally the playoff laughing stock now. But for some reason, we need to make that jump to get to second round or even third round appearance. And for some reason, there's always something that gets in the way. Now, like I said, we're only just making predictions. We're not genies. We don't go into the future, but it's just a trend. Mm-hmm. Like everyone always jokes that Toronto is literally a first-round team. They will always be a first-round team. Yes, they made it out of the second round, but, what did they do in round 2? Yeah. Literally nothing. Literally nothing. They won one game. And it was literally a one-goal game. So, we're probably looking at another first-round exit for Minnesota, and I'm not trying to be mean when I say that. It's literally because Minnesota fans are used to this. They're used to heartbreak. I'm sorry if you can flip me off I really don't. I'm already expecting it coming. Minnesota is known for heartbreak. Look, what am I trying to refer here? The last time that we won a playoff series was literally 2014 against Colorado.
I think so. It was like 2015, I think.
14 or 15. Because and I remember, was it Joel Eriksson Ek was the one who scored the game winner?
I think it was Granlund or I can't exactly remember who scored that one. I want to say it was either Granlund or like it could have even been Niederreiter at this point too.
Nino Niederreiter. It was Nino Niederreiter. Because John Forsland played in my head as soon as you said that. Because he was the one that was on the call for NBC that day. But yeah, I see a first round exit again, unfortunately. But like, I mean, like we're all used to this. Like we have high hopes. And yes, I almost said high hopes, as in from the song "High Hopes" by Panic at the Disco. And it just gets taken away from us because I'm sorry, but us Wild fans and Viking fans just can't have anything nice. And I apologize for that. But anyway, anything that you want to cover, Jake, before we sign off?
Well, I mean, I could give you like my quick line thoughts and stuff like that, and who I think is going to be
yes.
Line.
Yes, go ahead.
And stuff like that, as well as maybe kind of to wrap everything up here, just kind of look at the first 10 games and kind of give our general thoughts on where we are there, and then I can kind of give you my lines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So for me, if you want to look that up, I can quick give my lines and stuff like that. I won't take too much time on it. It's just more of like a generalization of where we think the first 10 games are going to go. So for me, I will say the top line to start the year will be Kaprizov, Hartman, and Zuccarello. Line 2 will be Marcus Johansson, Eriksson Ek, and Boldy. Line 3 will be Marcus Foligno, Marco Rossi, and Brandon Duhaime. And then line 4 will be Patty Maroon, Gaudreau, and Dewar. But you could switch Gaudreau and Rossi around as well. But for me, I'd prefer to see Gaudreau in the bottom line, or maybe even flip-flop Gaudreau and Hartman for now. One of those two moves I could see, but if I had to guess, I'd say the opening line 4 will be Maroon, Gaudreau, and Dewar. And then our D pairings will be Spurgeon and Middleton, because, well, obviously they're arguably our two best defensemen. Brodin and Faber will be line 2, just because I feel like that could be a very good combo for the future. I mean, Brodin is one of the more underrated defensemen in the league. And then for D pairing 3, this one could go a couple different ways, but I'm going to say Alex Goligoski and Kalen Addison. But you could switch out John Merrill for either one of them. Hopefully for Goligoski, because I need to see more from Addison, because the Wild haven't, I don't know if they just did that on purpose because he wasn't living up to what they were hoping, or if there was some, stuff going on in his head, or if he wasn't quite into hockey like we thought he was. But I need to see Addison play for a long period of time. Then at the trade deadline, if it doesn't work out, I mean, we could always ship him off. He's only like $825,000, but who knows? And then I say the Gus Bus starts, and then Flowers are backup.
I can agree with those ones. All right. Final thing we want to cover. We open up, like I said, we wanted to cover the first few games of the season. We already technically know who our roster is going to look like. So looking at some of these games, and I'll bring this up for you guys so you can see it. Make sure that's on loop. I hope that's on loop. I hope that's on loop. Yeah. So we open up the season with Florida, the Eastern Conference champs, to start the season. Then we hit the road for Toronto and Montreal. Come back home for 3 against LA, Columbus, and Edmonton, which is a weird combination of teams. And then to close out the month, we are East Coast swing with Philadelphia, Washington, and New Jersey. And I think we also hit the Rangers and Islanders in that stretch too.
All right.
So, guys, we're literally right around the corner from hockey. We really are.
8 days from today, as of the live stream and stuff like that, and we're only 6 days away from opening night period, with a nice triple header on ESPN. And plus, too, it sounds like for the days where we have all 32 teams, ESPN is going to kind of do their own version of Sunday NFL Red Zone, where they'll have like highlights and they'll show a lot of different games and stuff like that. And so that'll be kind of nice to see, just a little bit of like general NHL news on top of, the Wild and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to be intrigued to see here, because if I had to guess, kind of just looking at these first 10 games, if we can get out to like a 6-4, 7-3 start, then I really like our chances. But if we go like 3-7 or 4-6, I mean, 4-6 wouldn't be the end of the world. But if we go any lower than that, then we might be in some trouble to begin with. Because I know last year that was one of our Achilles heels, is we got out like. Basically, I think what happened is Everson didn't play the way we should have played, and they tried to play like a couple years before and stuff like that, and we ended up getting boat raced and couldn't stop a thing. And yeah, October last year was horrible for us. So if we can get off to a better start and go, let's say, 5-5, 6-4, 7-3 in the first 10, I really like our chances.
Yeah. At least we don't play any Central Division teams to open up the season. I mean, we have our final two games of preseason tomorrow versus Chicago, and then Saturday versus the Stars. So, all right, guys. That's gonna wrap up this. It's not a short stream, but it's a pretty decently long stream for just a season preview. I know that Jake and I are probably going to get together and do some wild games for the season, especially if we both have a day off that we can do a game together. I'll be bringing back Iowa streams as well, so I'll get that up for you guys, because I'm only a 10 game season ticket holder. I got opening night, and then I got to move my following game. So, games that I can already tell you I can stream. I can probably definitely stream that King. I could probably stream opening night for you guys, to be honest, or home opener. That'd be really fun. But me and Jake will talk about that, so that way we can plan that. But, guys, thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to let you guys listen to the Wild Anthem to close it out. I'm just going to hide both of us while you go ahead and just sign out. Leave a like if you guys enjoy it. Jake, thank you for joining me on the stream, man.
Thank you. It's always a lot of fun.
All right. Yep. And we will see you guys for opening night.